The situation with my stepmother, Megan, regarding my college fund is leaving me very confused. I'm starting to question everything. This is a long and complicated situation, so please bear with me. Some background. My parents divorced when I was 10. It was a complicated separation that left me feeling lost and alone for a long time. My dad remarried Megan when I was 14, and she brought 2 kids from her previous marriage into our family. Jack, 16, and Emma, 13. The transition wasn't easy, and we never really felt like a united family, despite Megan's constant efforts to push the narrative of a big happy family. I've always been a good student, maintaining a 3.8 GPA throughout high school. My dream is to attend a prestigious university and study engineering. I participated in the robotics club, where I won several competitions, and volunteered at the local animal shelter. For the past 3 years, my dad has always supported my academic goals, at least until recently. A few months ago, when I was starting to apply to colleges, my dad sat me down for a conversation. He told me about a substantial college fund he had been saving for me since I was born. It's enough to cover tuition and living expenses at most top universities. I was emotional, feeling that my hard work was paying off and that my dreams were within reach. We spent hours that night talking about different universities, discussing programs, and planning campus visits. It was one of the best conversations I've had with my dad in years. The problem started when Megan found out about the college fund. At first, it was subtle. She cornered me in the kitchen one morning when my dad had already gone to work. Her tone seemed casual, but there was an important undertone in her words. She said things like, "You know, when I was your age, I worked to pay for college, took out loans, worked part-time jobs. That really taught me the value of money." I tried to ignore it, telling her that I was planning to get a part-time job to cover extra expenses, but Megan said, "But you don't need to, you really don't need to, not with all this money being handed to you." From that point on, Megan's comments became more frequent and pointed. She started telling stories about people who became successful on their own, during dinner, always with a sharp glance in my direction. She'd talk about her friend's son, who's working 3 jobs to pay for his engineering degree, or her cousin, who paid off her student loans in record time and is now a successful entrepreneur. These stories became a regular feature at our dinner table, always accompanied by comments about responsibility and the value of hard work. My dad agreed, seemingly aligned with the implication that I was somehow less responsible or hardworking for accepting his help. The worst part is that Megan started manipulating my dad. I overheard her talking to him about how giving me the money might prevent my growth or make me dependent. She kept insisting that I should work to pay for college or take out loans like everyone else. One night, I heard them talking in their room. Megan was saying, "I'm just worried about him, darling. Giving him all this money, don't you think that could make him lazy? Maybe we should consider reducing the fund or only paying for tuition, but not living expenses." To my horror, my dad said something about how he always planned to help me with college, but that he also recognized that Megan could be right about the value of working for things. Since then, my dad has started to hesitate. He's making comments about maybe reducing the fund or only paying for tuition, but not living expenses. It's as if he's forgotten all our previous conversations about my future, all his promises of support. I tried talking to my mom about it, but she and my dad barely communicate. When I explained the situation to her on the phone, she got angry and told me to stand up for myself and not let that woman manipulate me. Easy for her to say. She doesn't have to live with her advice. Although well-intentioned, it doesn't help me deal with the daily situation at home. Last week, things reached a critical point. I was heading to my room when I overheard Megan talking to Jack in the kitchen. She said, "Don't worry about college, dear. I'm working to get part of your half-brother's college fund redirected to your future. It's not fair for him to get such a large sum when you and Emma won't receive the same," Megan said. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only was Megan trying to take my college fund, but she was actively working to redirect it to her own kids. The injustice of it made me furious. Without thinking, I stormed into the kitchen and confronted her. Megan's eyes widened in surprise. "Were you eavesdropping on us?" she asked. I was too angry to care about her accusation. "What do you mean by working on my college fund?" That's the money my dad has been saving for me since I was born." Megan's expression hardened. She said, "I'm just trying to make sure all the kids in this family are treated fairly. It's not right for you to get such a large amount when Jack and Emma won't have the same opportunity." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But it's not your money to redistribute," I argued. "My dad saved this for me long before you were even in the family." Megan got angry and said in a stern tone, "Watch your tone, young man. You're being incredibly selfish right now. Have you considered the future of your half-siblings?" I felt like I was losing my mind. Selfish for wanting to use the money my dad saved for my education? How does that make me selfish? Megan crossed her arms. A truly responsible adult would understand the importance of fairness in a family. Maybe you should consider community college if you're so concerned about money. It would certainly be a more modest and appropriate choice. I was speechless. The audacity of her suggestion made me furious. I looked at Jack, hoping for some support, but he just stared at the floor, clearly uncomfortable. "This is crazy." I finally managed to say, "I'm going to talk to my dad about this." Megan smiled and said, "Go ahead, but remember, your dad and I are partners. We make decisions together about what's best for this family." I left the kitchen furious. I needed to talk to my dad, make him understand what was going on, but every time I tried to be alone with him since then, Megan was there, hovering and guiding the conversation. The next few days were tense. Megan acted as though nothing had happened, but there was an assumption in her behavior that made me furious. She made comments at dinner about the importance of money, responsibility, and not accepting handouts, always with a sharp look in my direction. My dad seemed to notice the tension. He agreed with Megan's comments, occasionally adding his own anecdotes about the value of hard work. It was as if he had forgotten all our previous conversations about my future, all his promises of support. I felt more and more isolated. Jack and Emma avoided me, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but unwilling to go against their mom. I focused on my college applications, determined to secure as many scholarship opportunities as possible, just in case. One night, I finally cornered my dad alone in his office and said I wanted to talk to him about something. My dad looked up from his computer, furrowing his brow. "What about, son?" I took a deep breath. Megan has been saying some things about redistributing the money, about me maybe not using it. I thought we had a plan. My dad's expression was hard to read. He sighed. "Your stepmom raised some valid points about responsibility and the value of working to earn things," he said slowly. "Maybe we were hasty in offering you the full amount." I felt like the ground was opening up beneath me. "But Dad, you promised." "I've worked so hard, kept my grades up, did everything you asked." My dad seemed uncomfortable. "I know, son, and we're proud of you. But Megan thinks—" I interrupted him, my anger finally exploding. "Since when does Megan decide my future? She's not my mom. She wasn't there all those years when you were saving for my education." My dad's expression hardened. "Megan is my wife and part of this family. Her opinion matters." I asked before my dad could respond, "But what about your promise to me?" The office door opened, and Megan walked in. "Is everything okay?" she asked. My dad said, "It's fine, we were just discussing college options." Megan smiled. "Wonderful. I was thinking we could all sit down this weekend and look at some more affordable schools. Maybe some with good study and work programs." I looked at my dad, silently pleading for him to say something in my defense, but he just nodded. I left the office feeling defeated and betrayed. It was clear Megan had won. My dreams of attending a top university were slipping away. Some additional points I think are relevant. Megan has never worked outside the home since marrying my dad. She constantly talks about the importance of financial independence but depends entirely on my dad's income. When I pointed this out once, she got very defensive and said being a stay-at-home mom was the most important job in the world. When I mentioned the unfairness of potentially redirecting my college fund to Jack and Emma, Megan said it was about equality in the family, but she conveniently ignores that my dad started this fund long before she was in the picture. She also ignores the fact that Jack and Emma's biological dad is still around and could potentially contribute to their college funds. I tried to come to an agreement, suggesting I could work part-time during college to cover some expenses, but Megan dismissed that as not responsible enough. She seems to think that unless I'm struggling and stressed about money, I'm not learning the right lessons. My dad seems conflict-averse and often agrees with what Megan says to keep the peace. I'm worried he'll give in to her pressure about the college fund. He's always been like this, even when he was married to my mom. I think it's part of why their marriage ended. I considered reaching out to my grandparents, my dad's parents, about this, but I'm worried it'll cause more family drama. They've never been big fans of Megan, and I'm afraid that if they get involved, it'll just make the situation at home even more tense. Megan is constantly pushing this narrative of a big happy family, but her actions don't match her words. She treats Jack and Emma differently than she treats me, and it's becoming more and more obvious. For example, she never questions their spending habits or lectures them about financial responsibility. I've started to wonder if Megan is pushing so hard for me to use the college fund because she wants to use the money for something else. Maybe for a big family vacation, to renovate the house, or to pay for Jack and Emma's college. But I have no proof of this, just a suspicion. Megan has started making comments about how I should be more grateful for everything she and my dad have done for me, talking about how they've sacrificed so much to give me a good life. But from my perspective, it's my dad who's made the sacrifices, not her. I'm starting to feel like I'm being manipulated. Megan says one thing to me when we're alone and then completely denies or twists her words when my dad is around. This is making me question my own memories. I'm worried that if I push Megan too much, she'll convince my dad to kick me out of the house. I'm about to turn 18, and I know that legally they won't be obligated to support me anymore. I feel like I'm at a crossroads. If I stand up for myself and insist on using the college fund, I risk ruining my relationship with my dad and making life at home unbearable. If I give in to Megan's demands, I might be giving up my dreams and preparing for a future of financial struggles. Am I the asshole for wanting to take my dad's college fund? Should I just swallow this and figure out how to pay for college on my own? I feel like I'm losing my mind. I really need an outside perspective. Additional edit. I realized I should clarify something about the college fund situation. When I mentioned the college fund my dad told me about a few months ago, it wasn't because I felt entitled to it. This fund was a surprise to me, but it aligned with my dad's constant encouragement of my academic efforts throughout high school. While I didn't know about the specific fund until recently, my dad always assured me he would support my college education as long as I kept up good grades. That promise is why I focused so much on my studies, maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I understand that I don't automatically have a right to this money, and I am incredibly grateful for the opportunity it represents. If my dad had told me he couldn't afford college, I would have understood and found other ways to pay for it. My frustration isn't about feeling entitled, but about the sudden change in plans after the fund was revealed. It's been about a month since my last post. I wish I had better news to share, but things have only gotten worse, and now I'm writing this from my friend Mike's guest room. I've been kicked out of the house, and my relationship with my dad is ruined. Here's what happened after my last post. The problems at home continued to escalate. Megan's comments about my college fund became more frequent and more pointed. She brought it up at every opportunity, always with a sarcastic remark about how I needed to learn the value of hard work and independence. My dad remained frustratingly passive, rarely intervening and often agreeing with Megan's words. I tried to keep my head down and focus on my college applications. I spent most of my time in my room, avoiding family dinners and common areas as much as possible, but Megan seemed to interpret that as a personal problem. She started accusing me of being antisocial and ungrateful, claiming that I was deliberately excluding myself from family moments. The breaking point came last weekend. I finally received an acceptance letter from my dream school, a top-tier engineering program I had been working towards for years. In my excitement, I forgot about the ongoing problems and ran downstairs to share the news with my dad. Megan was in the kitchen when I found him, but I was too happy to care. My dad's initial reaction was happiness. For a moment, it felt like old times when he hugged me and started asking questions about the program. But then Megan cleared her throat, and the mood in the room changed instantly. She started with her complaints about financial responsibility. I couldn't take it anymore. All the frustration and anger that had been building up over the past few months exploded. I confronted Megan about her constant interference, her attempts to redirect my college fund, and her manipulation of my dad. I told her that she had no right to try to take something my dad had been saving for me since before she even entered the family. The argument quickly escalated. Megan's face turned red with anger as she began yelling about how ungrateful and selfish I was. She accused me of never accepting her as part of the family, of always treating her kids like strangers. My dad tried to intervene, but neither of us was listening at that moment. In the heat of the moment, I said some things I'm not proud of. I called Megan a gold digger, only interested in my dad's money. I accused her of trying to steal my college fund for her own kids. I even mentioned the fact that she had never worked a day since marrying my dad, despite her constant preaching about financial independence. Megan's reaction was explosive. She turned to my dad in tears, telling him she couldn't live like this anymore. She said she felt unsafe in her own home, that I had been hostile and aggressive toward her for years. And then she dropped the bomb that would change everything. Megan claimed that I had been making inappropriate advances toward her for months. She said I had been cornering her when we were alone, making suggestive comments, and even trying to touch her inappropriately. She painted herself as a terrified victim, too scared to speak up until now. I was paralyzed in silence. The accusation was so outrageous, so completely fabricated, that I couldn't even find words to defend myself. I looked at my dad, hoping he would see through this obvious lie, but the moment I saw his face, I just knew. He was looking at me with a mix of disgust and disappointment I had never seen before. I tried to defend myself, explain that Megan was lying, but my dad didn't want to listen. He seemed to have already made up his mind. With his voice trembling with anger, he told me to go to my room while he and Megan discussed what to do. I spent the next few hours pacing back and forth in my room, alternating between anger and disbelief. I couldn't understand how my dad could believe such an absurd lie. I tried to think of ways to prove my innocence, but it was my word against Megan's, and it was clear which side my dad had chosen. Later that night, my dad came to my room. His face was grim, and he couldn't even look me in the eye as he spoke. He said he couldn't have someone who acted so inappropriately living under his roof. He told me I had until the end of the week to find another place to live. I tried once again to defend my case, to make him see reason, but he didn't want to hear it. He just kept repeating that he was disappointed in me and that he never thought I could do something like this. Before leaving, he handed me an envelope containing some money to help me get started. I packed my things in one day, still unable to understand what was happening. Jack and Emma completely avoided me, no doubt having heard some version of Megan's lies. I tried one last time to talk to my dad, to make him see the truth, but Megan was always there, playing the role of the traumatized victim. I reached out to my mom, explaining the situation. Through tears, she was furious and wanted to confront my dad and Megan immediately, but I begged her not to. I was afraid it would only make things worse, and a small part of me still hoped that my dad would come to his senses on his own. Fortunately, my friend Mike has been incredibly helpful. When I told him what had happened, he immediately offered me his guest room. His parents are out of town for a few months on a work trip, so I can stay here without causing any trouble for his family. Now I'm trying to adjust to life at Mike's house. He has been incredibly supportive, but I can't help but feel like a burden. I'm trying to contribute where I can, cooking and doing household chores, but it's not the same as having my own place. I've been alternating between anger and despair. How could my dad believe such an awful lie? How could he throw away our relationship, all the years of memories and trust, based solely on Megan's word? And how could Megan do this? I knew she didn't like me, but accusing me of something so horrible and deliberately destroying my relationship with my dad is a level of cruelty I can't even comprehend. I thought about going to my grandparents, but I'm afraid of how they'll react to Megan's accusations and whether they'll believe her too. I couldn't bear to see that same look of disgust and disappointment on their faces. I also considered going to the police to file a report about Megan's false accusations, but I'm not sure it would do any good. It's not like she made these claims publicly or tried to file a formal complaint, and I'm afraid involving the authorities might only make my dad cling to Megan's lies even more. My mom offered to let me stay with her, but she lives in another state. Moving there would mean giving up my dream school, the future I've been working toward for years. But I'm starting to wonder if I have any other choice. Megan's lie has destroyed everything, and it seems like there's nothing I can do about it. My dad, the person who should know me better than anyone, who should support me no matter what, chose to believe the worst about me without even giving me a chance to defend myself. I've been replaying every interaction I had with Megan, trying to understand where this lie came from. Was it just an opportunistic move when she saw how angry I was during our argument, or had she been planning this for some time, waiting for the right moment to get rid of me once and for all? Either way, the level of calculation and cruelty involved makes me sick. As for my college fund, I have no idea what will happen to it now. Is Megan going to give it all to Jack and Emma? Will my dad use it to pay for my dream school, even though he thinks I'm some kind of predator? I've been trying to figure out my next steps. Mike helped me find a part-time job at a local supermarket. It's not much, but it's something to help me contribute to the household expenses and save a little for the future. Every time I try to think practically about my situation, I'm overwhelmed by a wave of anger and hurt. I've considered reaching out to Megan's ex-husband, Jack's father, to see if he has any insight into her behavior, any experience with her lies. But I'm afraid of opening that Pandora's box. The reality of my situation is starting to sink in. I'm relying on a friend's kindness with limited resources, without a permanent place to stay. The injustice of all of this is almost unbearable. I did everything right, studied hard, stayed out of trouble, worked toward my goals, and in the span of a single weekend, everything was taken from me because of one person's lies. I'm trying to stay strong so this doesn't destroy me. I keep telling myself that the truth will come out eventually, that my dad will realize what Megan did and come looking for me to apologize. But with each passing day, that hope feels more and more like a childish fantasy. I'm not sure what my next update will bring. For now, I want to thank everyone who read my original post and offered advice. I'm sorry I couldn't act on most of it before everything fell apart. If anyone has been through something similar or has any advice on how to move forward from here, I would be incredibly grateful. I feel lost and alone, and any guidance would be welcome. I'll try to post another update when I have more news. Until then, wish me luck. I have a feeling I'm going to need it. It's been about 2 weeks since my last update, and a lot has happened. I'm still living at Mike's house, but there's been an unexpected development that I needed to share. I was at work, restocking the shelves at the supermarket, when I received a call from my grandparents. I almost didn't answer. I've been avoiding calls from unknown numbers, afraid it's my dad or Megan trying to reach out to me. But something told me to pick up, and I'm glad I did. As soon as I heard my grandmother's voice, I knew something was wrong. She sounded worried and confused, asking if I was okay and if I was safe. At first, I didn't understand what was going on. Then, she mentioned that my dad had called them, telling them that I had left home. I was terrified, thinking that Megan's lies had spread beyond my dad. I asked my grandmother exactly what my dad had told them, and her answer confirmed my worst fears. My dad had told them about Megan's false accusations, painting me as some kind of predator who was making inappropriate advances toward my stepmother. I felt a knot in my stomach. It was bad enough that my dad believed those lies, but now my grandparents too? I couldn't stand the thought of them looking at me the same way my dad did, with disgust and disappointment. But as my grandmother kept talking, I realized something. Unlike my dad, who immediately believed Megan's accusations, my grandparents were skeptical. They knew me, they watched me grow up, and something about this story didn't sit right with them. That's why they were calling. Not to condemn me, but to hear my side of the story. For a moment, I was tempted to ignore it, tell them it was all a misunderstanding, and change the subject. I was so tired of trying to defend myself against these awful lies. But then I realized this might be my only chance to reveal the truth, to have someone in my family believe in me. So, I took a deep breath and told them everything. I started from the beginning, explaining about the college fund and Megan's increasing attempts to interfere. I told them about the arguments, about hearing Megan's plans to redirect the money to Jack, and described the final confrontation and how Megan made up those terrible accusations. As I realized I was losing control of the situation while speaking, I could hear my grandparents' reactions shifting from confusion to shock, then to anger. They asked questions, wanting to clarify certain points, but mostly they just listened. When I finally finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, my grandfather spoke, his voice stern with repressed anger. He said they believed me, that they knew I would never do the things Megan accused me of. He asked why I hadn't gone to them sooner, and I admitted that I was afraid they wouldn't believe me, that they'd side with my dad, just as he sided with Megan. My grandmother assured me that they would always be on my side, that they were sorry I had to go through this alone. Then, she said something that made me freeze. They were going to talk to my dad. I panicked a little, worried that confronting my dad would only make things worse. But my grandparents were resolute. They said they couldn't just sit by and watch their son throw away his relationship with his own child over a lie. They promised to call me back after speaking with him. The next few hours were agonizing. I couldn't focus on work. What if my dad didn't listen to them? What if it only made him angry and caused him to hold on to Megan's lies even more? Or worse, what if my grandparents changed their minds after talking to him, deciding maybe Megan was telling the truth? When my phone finally rang again, I answered. My grandfather's voice was grave as he explained what had happened. They called my dad, confronting him with what I had told them. At first, my dad tried to defend Megan, but they didn't let him ignore the issue. They demanded to know how he could believe such terrible things about his own son, how he could kick me out without even trying to get to the bottom of things. Apparently, the conversation got heated. My grandfather said that, for the first time in years, he raised his voice to his son. He told my dad he was making a terrible mistake, that he was being manipulated by Megan and was risking losing his relationship with me forever. Then, my grandfather dropped a bombshell. He told my dad that if he didn't resolve this situation, if he didn't at least try to listen to me and find out the truth, they would change their will. All their assets, the inheritance my dad had always assumed would be his one day, would go to me. I was shocked. I had never thought about my grandparents' inheritance, never considered it part of my future. Hearing that they were willing to use it as leverage to force my dad to see reason was impressive. My grandmother took the phone. Then she told me that they were supporting me 100%, that they would do whatever it took to help me get through this. They offered for me to stay with them to help me sort out my situation with college. They even said they would hire a lawyer if necessary, to protect me from any further false accusations from Megan. I was grateful beyond words, but also terrified. This was starting to spiral out of control, becoming bigger than just a family dispute. I asked them what my dad's reaction had been to their ultimatum. My grandfather explained that my dad had been silent at first, shocked. Then, with anger, he accused them of taking sides without knowing the full story, of trying to blackmail him. The call ended with my dad hanging up on them. Now we're in a waiting game. My grandparents gave my dad a week to contact me, to at least try to hear my side of the story. If he doesn't, they say they will carry out their threat about the inheritance. Part of me hopes this will be the wake-up call my dad needs, that it will make him question Megan's story and remember who I really am. But another part of me is terrified that this will only create a bigger divide between us, that my dad will see it as me pitting his parents against him. As for my housing situation, things are still good with Mike, but I know I can't stay here forever. His parents will be back in a few weeks. While they might be understanding of the situation, I can't impose on them. My grandparents' offer to let me stay with them is tempting, but they live in another state. I'm still working at the supermarket, trying to save money, but it's a drop in the ocean compared to what I'll need for college. I've been researching scholarships and loans, but without access to my college fund, the numbers just don't add up. The thought of giving up my dream school, settling for a cheaper option, or delaying college altogether is heartbreaking. I've also been dealing with the emotional fallout from all of this. Some days, I can barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by the injustice of it all. Other days, I'm angry, wanting to confront my dad and Megan, and force them to admit the truth. Mike has been great, listening to me when I need to vent and giving me space when I need to be alone, but I know this situation is stressing him out too. My mom has been calling regularly, still offering for me to stay with her. I appreciate her support, but I can't just leave. Besides, a small petty part of me doesn't want to give my dad and Megan the satisfaction of completely kicking me out. So now, I wait to see if my dad will reach out, if he'll be willing to hear the truth. I'll try to post another update when I have more news. It's been 3 months since my last update, and the situation has completely exploded. I'm still processing everything that's happened, but I'll try to lay it out as clearly as possible. Brace yourselves. This will be a long one. About a month after my grandparents gave my dad the ultimatum, I received a call from him. His voice was trembling, and he sounded like he had been crying. He asked if we could meet in person, saying he had something important to tell me. I was worried, but I agreed to meet him at a local cafe. When I saw him, I barely recognized him. He looked like he had aged years in just a few months, with deep dark circles under his eyes and a defeated air about him. As soon as we sat down, he completely broke down, sobbing and begging for my forgiveness. He explained that he had discovered the truth about Megan's lies. Apparently, she had been cheating on him with her ex-husband, Jack, and Emma's father, for the past few months. Not only that, but she was pregnant, and it was clear that the baby couldn't be my dad's. My dad overheard Megan on the phone with her ex, discussing their plans for the future. He didn't understand everything from that conversation, but it was enough to make him suspicious. He started paying closer attention, noticing inconsistencies in Megan's stories and behavior. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when my dad came home early one day and found Megan and her ex in a compromising situation. When confronted, Megan didn't admit everything right away. Instead, she tried to manipulate my dad, insisting that he was imagining things and that her ex was there just to talk about the kids. But my dad wasn't believing her anymore. He demanded the truth, and what came out was even worse than he had imagined. Megan and her ex had reconnected a few months earlier, supposedly while discussing matters related to Jack and Emma. One thing led to another, and they began an affair. However, as the truth unfolded, it became clear that Megan's deception went beyond just the affair. She admitted that she had been unhappy in the marriage for some time, feeling that she had rushed into it without fully getting over her ex. Instead of addressing these issues honestly, she chose to manipulate the situation to her advantage. Megan confessed that she saw my dad's college fund for me as a threat to her financial security. She didn't have direct access to it, but she had been subtly pressuring my dad to consider using the money for other things, like home renovations or family vacations. Her plan was to gradually deplete the fund while securing her own financial position. The false accusations against me were part of this plan. Although Megan tried to minimize her role in it, she admitted that she did feel uncomfortable around me at times, but acknowledged that she had exaggerated and distorted events to paint me in a negative light. Her goal was to create distance between me and my dad, ensuring that I wouldn't interfere with her plans. When my dad confronted Megan with all of this, she didn't even have the decency to seem embarrassed. Instead, she tried to invent a new lie, claiming that her ex had manipulated her, and that she too was a victim. She cried and said she had made a mistake, but that she really loved my dad. But the facade collapsed when her ex, angry at being used as a scapegoat, showed my dad text messages and emails proving that Megan had been an active participant in the affair and manipulation. Some of the messages detailed their plans for the future, including how they would handle the divorce and divide the assets. The cruelty of it all was staggering. Megan not only betrayed my dad's trust with the affair, but she was also actively working to undermine his relationship with me and secure her own future at our expense. She played on my dad's insecurities and his desire to make his new marriage work, all while planning her exit strategy. My dad was devastated as he told me all of this. He kept apologizing, saying he knew he didn't deserve my forgiveness, but that he hoped one day I could trust him again. He told me he was filing for divorce immediately and would do everything in his power to make things right. The divorce process has been a nightmare. Megan, realizing her plan failed, is now trying to get as much as she can before the divorce is finalized. She's claiming she's entitled to half of everything, including the house and my dad's retirement savings. My dad requested the divorce immediately after discovering Megan's affair, but the wheels of justice turn slowly. We've already gone through countless preliminary hearings and unsuccessful mediation attempts. Our lawyer says it could take anywhere from 6 months to a year before everything is finalized. Thankfully, the evidence of her infidelity and the manipulative nature of her actions are working in my dad's favor in our state. Although adultery doesn't automatically disqualify a spouse from receiving alimony, It is taken into account when determining spousal support. The judge has not been receptive to Megan's claims, especially given the existence of the condemning text messages and emails. Megan's pregnancy has complicated things. She's trying to use this to her advantage, claiming the baby could be my dad's and that he shouldn't abandon his child. However, given the timeline of the affair and the evidence my dad has, it's highly unlikely the baby is his. My dad's lawyer has advised him to request a paternity test as soon as the baby is born. But for now, Megan can't use the pregnancy as effectively to manipulate the situation. As for my college fund, I discovered that Megan couldn't access it directly, but she had been pressuring my dad to withdraw money from it for various family expenses. My dad, wanting to keep the peace and believing Megan's lies that I didn't deserve the money, agreed a few times. He promised to repay every penny, even if it meant working 2 jobs to do so. The most frustrating part is how Megan continues trying to manipulate everyone around her. She told Jack and Emma that my dad was trying to steal their baby, that he was abusive, and that they needed to testify against him in the divorce proceedings. She contacted family friends, telling a story of being a misunderstood wife who made a mistake but deserved a second chance. She even had the audacity to call me, crying, saying she never wanted things to get to this point, that she was just scared and confused. She tried to convince me that if I told my dad I forgave her, maybe we could all be a family again. The manipulation was so obvious it was almost laughable, but it still made me sick. Jack and Emma are stuck in the middle of this nightmare. They had been spending more time with their dad recently, unaware that their parents were reigniting their relationship behind my dad's back. When everything came to light, they were devastated. They reached out to me and my dad, apologizing for not standing up for me and explaining that Megan had fed them lies about me. Megan told them that I was jealous of them and trying to sabotage their relationship with my dad. She convinced them that I was unstable and potentially violent, which is why they avoided me in the weeks leading up to my departure. Discovering the truth was a huge blow for them, and they are struggling to accept who their mother really is. My dad has been trying to redeem himself in every way he can think of. He contacted my grandparents, thanked them, and offered to pay for therapy for me, recognizing the emotional trauma that this ordeal caused. He's even trying to make things right with my mom, acknowledging that his poor choices placed an unfair burden on her. As for me, I'm still trying to process everything. Part of me is relieved that the truth finally came out, that I've been vindicated, and that my dad finally believes me. But another part of me is angry. Angry that it took this level of betrayal for him to see the truth. Angry that I spent months in pain and uncertainty because he couldn't trust his own child, instead of a woman he had known for just a few years. I've returned home for now, to my old room. It's strange to be back here, knowing everything that has happened. My dad and I are treading lightly with each other, both unsure of how to rebuild our relationship. We're about to start family therapy soon, hoping to overcome some of the hurt and distrust that has built up. My plans for college are back on track. My dad promised to do whatever it takes to ensure I can attend the school of my dreams. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. My grandparents have been incredibly supportive, offering emotional and financial help if I need it. The legal battles are far from over. Megan is fighting tooth and nail for every penny she can get, dragging out the divorce proceedings with constant demands and accusations. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a devoted wife and stepmother who made a one-time mistake, but the evidence of her manipulative behavior is hurting her case. My dad's lawyer is pushing for a firmer, fairer settlement, given Megan's infidelity and the premeditated nature of her deceit. It's unlikely that she'll get the prize she was hoping for. The judge seems inclined to grant her only the minimum required by law, which is a small victory in this mess. There's also the issue of potential criminal charges. The lawyer suggested that Megan's actions could constitute fraud, given the level of financial manipulation involved. It's a complex legal area, and my dad is still deciding whether to pursue this route or just focus on finalizing the divorce and moving forward with our lives. Megan's ex isn't getting away unscathed either. His involvement in the affair and subsequent manipulation came to light, and he's facing his own legal issues. His current wife, yes, he was married the whole time, has filed for divorce, and rumors are circulating that his company will fire him due to the scandal. It's a small consolation, but it feels like some form of justice. As I write this update, I'm struck by how quickly and deeply one person's lies can destroy multiple lives. Megan has walked away from the wreckage she created, without a backward glance, leaving the rest of us to pick up the pieces. It will be a long road to recovery for all of us. I'm not sure what the future holds, but for the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe again. The truth is out, my name is cleared, and I have my dad back. Even though our relationship is fragile, it's more than I dared hope for during those dark days when I thought I had lost everything. To everyone who has followed my story and offered support, thank you. Your kind words and advice were a lifeline during this trial. I'll post another update if there are any significant developments. But for now, I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. I wish us luck. After everything that's happened, I think we're going to need it.